Hey everyone, welcome to What Do You Know with Nick and Devin.
I'm Devin.
And I'm Nick. And this is our first episode.
Yeah, taking the leap into the big old podcast pool.
It's a big pool.
It's a crowded pool.
It's quite...
I'm waiting for like Adult Swim when everyone like leaves a little and there's like that creepy old guy with way too much chest hair.
Are you the creepy old guy?
I have a lot of chest hair.
You have a lot of chest hair. That's okay. That's okay. So what are we doing here? What do people have to look forward to, Devin?
Well, I mean, this is a podcast.
Oh, great start.
As far as we know.
Uh-huh.
It's called What Do You Know? And the idea behind it is for us to teach each other things that the other person doesn't think they know about. So, like, I don't know if you know about one thing, and I'm going to teach you about it.
I agree. I'm not. Of course, I agree. That's
I'd
what
hope
we
so.
came up with. Yeah. And what I've realized through researching different things for this is that I don't know a lot of things, and so this is going to be fun for our own knowledge, as well as I think a lot of people are going to be like, "Oh shit! Like I didn't know that." Are we swearing on this?
I think
we're
it's
swearing.
right.
On this,
I
right?
can't not.
We're two boys from Chicago. There's no way we cannot swear. Sorry.
And I think our interests, while similar, because we're friends, we also have very different perspectives. And like we have a lane of similar interests, but we also have a variety of things that we don't really share interests in.
Oh, agreed. I mean, like as like a Catholic, Hispanic, gay Jew.
That's a lot.
It's a lot of different
That's a
perspectives.
long list.
Also, we've been friends for 10+ years.
Ugh, yeah.
Sorry, I'll see my fucking self out. Jesus Christ.
I just didn't like there's 10 years. I'm happy to be your friend for all my life. But,
now we're
10
old.
years.
We're
Now
old. Well, Devin, let me tell you about a little topic. Actually, before I get into that, maybe I should ask you what you know about the topic.
Oh,
get
yeah.
it? Do you get it? Because like,
what do I know?
right?
But our podcast name is What Do You Know?
Oh, yikes!
Oh, God.
We'll flip that around.
All right.
We'll fix it in post. Tell me about your maybe you'll pick up on this tattoos.
Oh,
Yeah.
I have tattoos.
Surprise.
What do I know about tattoos?
Yeah.
I know it is a really cool art style. I fucking love tattoos.
Yeah.
I'm so addicted. I'm getting another one soon. This May actually. Upcoming May of 2023.
Are you designing your own?
This new tattoo that I'm getting is going to be one of my own designs.
That's so exciting.
And I'm very excited because it was my New Year's resolution for 2023 to design my own tattoo.
Nice.
Because I've been learning how to draw American traditional style because I think it's such a clean and like badass style of tattoo. And I really love drawing it and like learning about the style and like the rules and stuff of it. So yeah, I'm designing my own tattoo and I'm really excited to get it.
That's really awesome. I'm excited for that. To see it. I also have. I got a jacket on. Yikes! But I have this, and it goes up my arm. It's like a whole thing. But I think you're right. Like once you get one, like you're just kind of like, what's the next fucking?
Yeah.
What can I do now?
And like I've always been really tempted just to like walk into a shop and do like the gumball machine of get what you get. And I've been really tempted, but I think I want to do that when I'm done getting all the tattoos that like I personally like have a plan for.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm at a comfortable space with like the tattoos on my body where I can be like, yeah, I could just add some random shit and it'll be cool.
Sure.
Yeah.
I would never do that. I could not. I have to be very intentional about the tattoo that I'm going to get. Like flash pieces and stuff like that. Like, absolutely. Like they're all great. I love them. I think they're fantastic. I think the artistry behind it is great. I just could never just be like, yeah, sure, just put that on my body.
My spooky bear on my left leg was just a design that I saw of a tattoo artist, and they were like, "This is available." I was like, "Fuck yeah, put that on my body right now. That's so fucking cool."
And they said, "Sir, please leave."
Well, we actually have the same name, this tattoo artist and I.
Nice.
Their name was Devin as well. And they were really cool, and then they moved to fucking Florida, and I'm pissed. But it's fine.
Are you telling me you're not going to go down to Florida to
Well,
follow them?
yeah, if I ever go on a vacation on Florida, then yeah, I'm going to take a pit stop and be like, what up, Devin? tattoo me, please. Thank you. Anything you have. I'm just going to walk in naked into the shop and just anywhere. Just tattoo
But honestly,
me
in Florida, like,
fine.
Would I be surprised? Right? They'd be like, ugh, another one.
Right.
All right. Well, let's get into it.
Yeah.
There's a couple of things to cover. So, like, yes,
tell me what you want me to
is beautiful. And what's cool is I think a lot of us today, I mean, like, growing up, my mom was like, if you get a tattoo, you're dead.
Oh, yeah.
You're dead to me.
Yeah. People were evil
right.
if they had tattoos.
Oh, my God.
Like, biker bar type shit is like,
Right. And so, like, my brother got a tattoo on his upper arm. And I don't think my mom talked to him for like 2 weeks. And then my first tattoo was on my wrist, and I was like,
right.
I really went for it, you know? But, I mean, going back, I think we all know of, like, people being tattooed in, like, Polynesian states, in even some Egyptian states, things like that.
Right.
But the word comes from a Tahitian word, tatau, meaning to hit or strike, which kind of makes sense when you think of a needle hitting your skin.
Yeah, inserting the ink into your body.
Right, over and over and over again. Yeah. No, really, think of that pain. But I didn't realize, I guess, how far back this could really go. So as of right now, okay, let's phrase it this way. How old, the oldest mummy that has tattoos that we've discovered, what era do you think that is? Or, like, what years?
I didn't even start to, like, would even imagine to consider, like, a mummy being inked up. Give me some tats on that tat in common.
No, we're done. Shut this down.
All right, that's done.
And that's
All right,
it.
let's mute my mic. Okay, so there's a mummy from Egypt?
No.
Not Egypt.
Not even Egypt.
There's a mummy.
Take it back now, y'all.
That's inked up. So I'm going to say, is it in the BCE era?
It is in the BCE era.
Oh, shit.
Looking at, like, when this mummy was found, this Iceman, like, when he was dated to.
Is an Iceman?
Well, I mean, like, yeah, he was found under ice.
All right, you just gotta tell me now.
Okay, so it's basically 5,200 years ago. So 3370 to 3100 BC.
Whoa.
Which, like, a lot of other civilizations were still happening during that time. It's just crazy to think how far back that is.
No, absolutely. I think time always really fucks me up because it's like humans have only been on this planet for such, like, a blip in time, and, like, the Earth and our sun has been around for, like, billions of years past that. But then I still get tripped up that, like, oh my God, that was 3 whatever thousands of years ago that you said.
Good memory, yeah.
Steel trap. It's wild to think that, like, we were able to find a body that old, and then two, like, that dude's inked up.
So, and I really hope that phrase catches on a lot through the rest of this episode. So he is named Otzi the Iceman.
Okay.
Because he was found in the Ozel Alps, which border Austria and Italy today.
Oh, okay.
So found under ice, all of this, 61 tattoos.
Whoa.
Yeah. Now, it's not like he had, like, 61 bears and, like, full chest of tattoos, right?
Like,
no.
some pinup doll.
Yeah, exactly. And they're like, this doesn't seem right. It's 19 groupings of different black markings. So anywhere between, like, 1 to 3 millimeters in diameter, anywhere between 7 and 40 millimeters in length. So pretty, like, across the board, but definitely just kind of lines. No artistic aspect to them. What they also found in that, which I think is pretty cool, is, one, they were made with incisions, like, in the skin, and then, like, rubbed with some fireplace soot. So basically taking ash and then rubbing that into the incision, and that's kind of how old school tattoos happen.
Oh, like they cut them open and then just like, all right, here's your ink.
But not like I don't think they're like just like a deep cut and they're like, it's fine. It'll be cool, I promise.
It's fine. It's not gonna be infected. It's probably
my method, okay?
It's fine. Just the process, bro.
Yeah, exactly. So that's how that kind of happened, and they found a lot of areas where those tattoos were on his body actually had kind of corresponding links to joint pain or like arthritis, things like that, and particularly in some areas where acupuncture is prevalent in that practice.
Whoa.
So they're like, are tattoos of theorizing, right? That they were used to like relieve some sort of pain or help in some sort of acupuncture and maybe kind of this is kind of the style that took over.
Like leeching?
Kind of.
Okay.
Right. And so that is the oldest to date. Now, shortly after that, we found 2 mummies, and by we, I mean, of course,
You.
Doug.
Right,
Exactly.
Right.
We found 2 mummies in Egypt, 3351 to 3017 BC, somewhere around there. Now, these had figurative tattoos, so they were a little bit more artist-based. And so I laugh because I'm like, someone back in the day was like, look at all my flashes. Pick one.
It's on the stone tab.
Right, exactly. We'll take number 3. And so what was cool about this is, taking it back a little bit, when we found a lot of mummies, especially female mummies in Egypt, that had tattoos. And so there was a long process where they thought within that culture only women got tattoos.
Yeah.
This kind of turns that on its head, because these bodies were before the unification of Egypt under a pharaoh.
Oh.
Which I didn't even think about that, to be honest. Like there was a time in Egypt where a pharaoh didn't rule, right? And so the man had a bull on him, and then the woman had kind of these S-type figures kind of going in a row on her shoulder. Maybe.
Or was it like the cool like 8th grade S that you carved into desks?
That's exactly what it was. And they're like, weirdly, they were middle school.
Oh, sick.
Yeah. Preteens, actually. So that was pretty cool, right? So looking at one, kind of flipping old theories on their heads as far as what that means for tattoos, but also realizing that so far back, you have two kind of lanes of tattoos. One looking at, kind of an acupuncture medical aspect.
Right.
And the other looking at just a form of artistry and a form of representation.
Because they're not, relatively, they're not too far apart from each other either. Right. Granted, they're like empires away, but it's really interesting to see, like, okay, one's for medicine, one's for being cool.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And that's why
one's
they did
a nerd.
They were trying to really get in with the ink craft. Yeah. And so looking at these, they found a lot of, looking at mummies and tattoos and all of that in a lot of different areas. So anywhere from Greenland, Alaska, Siberia, Mongolia, Western China, Egypt, Sudan, the Philippines, the Andes. So you're really spanning the board here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
However, when you really think about that, we want to start to thinking about, like, what's the cultural practice behind these tattoos in those areas, right? So looking at China and Asia, there was actually, tattoos were pretty barbaric for them and only used for some sort of like punishment for criminal acts. So you found mummies in 2100 to like 550 BC, and it was usually on their faces. So like it was kind of like
to mark their crimes that they did. So you'd be like, oh, you stole shit.
Right.
I know not to trust you.
Correct.
Exactly.
Wow. Exactly. And so you see actually a lot of literature from that area looking and referring to bandits and folk heroes as having tattoos.
Oh.
Also crazy that like folk heroes was like, when I think of folk heroes, I'm like
Robin Hood.
Right.
And maybe he's like kind of a sexy fox and it's fine.
And it's totally sexual awakening with a fox. Fuck you, Disney. But also thank you, I guess. Right, it's fine.
It's confusing.
Right.
It's fine.
And so that's interesting, right? So you have one culture that's now really steering away from any sort of medical or any sort of artistry, and really looking at like, how do I mark someone, as a punishment because of what they did, right? And so then you also have the Samoan culture, which this culture has been practiced for over 2,000 years. And I think a lot of us kind of culturally start to go into like that kind of Polynesian kind of full body tattooing that we might, like when I think of like, oh, like back in the day tattooing, that's kind of what my mind goes to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think you have over 200 years. This was like a family practice, like a father passing down to his son like skill sets of how to tattoo someone, using anything from boar and shark teeth. They were also very ceremonious in this. So like any new chief or anything like that would go through this process. But this process was also lengthy.
Yeah.
Like you're looking like 5-10 day sessions. Like you're using like a shark tooth and soot to like carve someone's entire leg down.
Yeah, and I know and I don't know like whose culture it is, but I know like essentially there's like one woman in this village who does it all the ceremonial tattoos, and it's essentially like a stick and poke tattoo, but like she has this big ass stick and just kind of like thwacks it in you, and you just have to, it's like a very like healing ceremonial thing for these people, and and I just can't imagine, like I'm sure it's such a very like healing and wonderful spiritual experience, but like, God damn, it's gotta hurt. Like
truly
having like a modern day needle dragging across your skin, like putting the ink in you, like that's already like you can handle it, but it's already like I'm okay after like a couple hours. Like I'm done.
You gotta get numb to it.
Yeah. But then just like having this woman like tapping a needle into you and like tapping that ink into you, it's just it's a pain I can't imagine.
Honestly, just put me out.
Right.
Just knock me out.
Right.
Well, so speaking of that, if you were unable to bear that pain, you would be branded with like the brand of shame, which was basically like a coward's brand.
Oh.
That you weren't able to sit
like
through the pain.
Literal brand? Or did they
I think
just
it was
like,
more like,
you have an unfinished tattoo, loser?
Kind of more so that. I think they were really dealing with like metals.
Right.
And like shaping metals at that time. But yeah, you were basically marked with this symbol to say that you weren't able to sit through your, cultural tattooing.
That's wild.
And I'm just like, ooh, like that probably was going to be
sucks.
me. I'm not going to lie to you. That was probably going to be me. It's like, so that's Samoan kind of Polynesian culture. Like we talked about in the Egyptian culture, long history of thinking women were the only ones that had tattoos. They also thought a little bit of a medical treatment on that end as well to relieve some pain, depending on some of the mummies that they found and also like the certain placement that they found.
Yeah.
And then in ancient Greece and Rome, tattoos. Now again, like the kind of Asian Chinese tattoos used more so as markings than they were in sort of either a medical or artistic.
Yeah.
Correct. And so looking at anything as punishment for criminals, usually on the face, again, as well as branding for slaves. So kind of like a cattle brand. Like not to say it like that, but like truly, that's actually though.
I'm going to mark you as property.
Right. And in ancient Greece, however, slaves were also marked if they paid their taxes for their freedom.
Oh.
So, especially in Athens, slaves were kind of treated, I guess, a little more nicely. I guess you could say.
You're still a slave.
Right, exactly. But they kind of had allowances, and they were able to save up for their freedom.
Yeah.
And so if that happened, they would be marked to show others that this person is a freed person at that point.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's kind of looking at the ancient and, thousands of years ago, this kind of practice of tattooing and all of that. So you have three kind of different lanes here, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of crime and punishment aspect, this medical aspect, and this artistry aspect.
Right.
So all of that is happening, and now we have this reintroduction of tattooing into the Western world. So a little bit more of like formulating tattoos into what we know them to now. Right? Where that really comes in is James Cook's voyage into the South Pacific. Okay. James Cook coming over, really landing on like Tahiti and things of that nature, and that's kind of where tattoo came from. Again, like that's a Phoenician word.
The word, yeah.
We've kind of circled back to James Cook being the one who brings that over to the British Empire and kind of reintroduces that. So their first voyage in 1766, they go down there. They have like a chief medical officer. They have all the shipmates and all the sailors, all that, blah, 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 right? Go back to Britain. The chief medical officer actually got a tattoo while he was there. Some of the sailors as well. They brought a man, and by brought I mean they probably took a man from Tahiti back to Britain.
They brought him. He was bound
right.
up.
They were like, he was having a good time. So happy to be here.
Wow.
Right. Wow. Party.
Where are your spices?
It's like, this is really bland. And he was fully tattooed out. Right.
Yeah.
In the words of you, inked out, I would say.
Thank you.
Right. And so that kind of brought this interest and intrigue and kind of brings in this introduction of sailors always getting tattoos. Right.
Yeah.
And so
trying to get one like at each port or stuff like that.
Right.
I think. I don't know.
And so that kind of tags along in that. So you kind of have now this, what's what I'm looking for? This inauguration, kind of the start of tattooing with sailors. And that kind of spread from sailors to criminals and kind of the lower class.
Yeah.
So that's happening in kind of the early 19th century. So all that's going on. By the 1840s, you're looking at that kind of practice of tattooing starting to enter public school boy atmosphere. Mm-hmm. So that kind of starts actually reaching the upper class between the 1840s and 1870s. So now the upper class is kind of like, well, that's kind of cool. Right, exactly. And so, however, because of that and because of still trying to want to like keep that a little bit of a secret. Of course, they're lengthy, they're expensive, they're painful. People like they're coming into the like house visits. It's not like you walk into a tattoo parlor and they're like, hey, what you want? You know what I mean? Like that didn't happen then. And they said it just like that, by the way. I listened to a video.
You looking to get inked up?
Yeah. Really grimy. Gross. And so by 1898, a publication in England at the time had stated that 1 in every 5 members of the gentry were tattooed. And when I think of gentry, I think of Maleficent and like the gentry, like the royals. Yes. And that's truly what it was. And what that means also, by the way.
Great. Something new.
Right. Hopefully. And so people of note that were tattooed at the time, George V, King Edward VII, King Frederick the IX of Denmark. I have these in Roman numerals in my notes, so like in my head I'm processing like that's what that number is.
Good job.
Really great. Little behind the scenes there, folks. King of Romania, the Kaiser Wilhelm, King Alexander of Yugoslavia, Tsar Nicholas II, King Alfonso XIII. Like just like across Europe, you have all of these people getting tattoos.
Yeah. Well, I feel like that's such a thing of high society and like the royals and the rich folk, where it's like, oh, like that person has a tattoo, that person has an iPhone. Like I gotta get that so I can show off my prestige level as well. Like it's just that stupid like competition amongst themselves where it's like, oh, I need to show off my money by having a tattoo or an iPhone or
what have you. Well, I mean, and even the kind of reach from lower class to upper class through time.
Oh, they always steal our shit.
Always. I mean, like look at fucking Lobster. Lobster was like, fucking...
Right, it's a bottom feeder.
Right,
like,
exactly.
God damn, it just eats shit off the floor.
And all of a sudden now it's like $100 for a
market
fucking piece.
price.
Right, exactly. MP.
What
okay,
market
go
are you
yourself.
shopping?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so remember that like a few years ago, everyone was like, I think the rich are gonna take cereal from us. Do you remember this? Because like there were some celebrities that were like, I don't know how to eat, or like I just found out what cereal was.
Oh yeah, wasn't that like Cardi B or one of the Kardashians?
Probably.
Was like, oh my god, I had Captain Crunch.
I think it was one of the Kardashians, and I'm just like, if that fucking like if all of a sudden cereal becomes like $18,000 a box,
right? If I have golden crusted Captain Crunch, like not only does it already in its current state rip up my mouth, like imagine chewing on golden nuggets.
Like just tears it apart. My dad used to love Captain Crunch, and I never got the appeal until I had Berries and Crunch. That kind of changes it. And I get it, like mouthfeel all the same, but I don't know what it was.
All right,
we'll edit that out. Don't worry about it. Okay, so again, all of these people of the gentry now have tattoos, right?
Right.
The big thing though, with Prince Albert, Prince George, then George V, and Tsar Nicholas, were all tattooed by Hori Chiyo, which was a Japanese artist at the time. Oh. So they traveled all the way out to Japan, got these tattoos done, because he was known as, quote, the Shakespeare of tattooing.
That's super surprising that they would travel that far.
Right.
Knowing like all the turmoil that's going on in Japan during the time.
Yeah, but they're royalty.
It's whatever.
They can whatever the fuck they want. Yeah, right, exactly. Right. So really cool. And so like looking into Hori, you have these kind of like a tiger with like a serpent wrapped around it and all these kind of very intricate designs for the time. Knowing that, I mean, again, you don't have modern technology. This is really kind of like a stick and poke sort of ordeal here. But you're also dealing with a little bit of color as well. You have a little bit of red.
Ooh, okay.
Added in there as well. So it starts to brighten it up a little bit. We're not just going black and white here. We're just, I guess, black and gray. Soot, if you will. And so...
Watered down soot and full soot.
Correct. So thinking of the time period, of course, now if we take that and flip it into the U.S., you know, New York elites and elites of the U.S. are always trying to think of what royalty are doing in Britain and in Europe was of the fashion. So now we start to have this coming into the U.S., right? And so in 1870 or 1872, jury's out.
Who knows?
Right. Martin Hildebrandt established the first tattoo shop in New York City. And so with that, he was in the Navy during the Civil War, learned how to tattoo, had some tattoos himself, and then would put soldiers' identification and tattoo that on them. So a lot of like, you know, with death and...
Right, it's easier to identify a body when...
Correct.
It's still on you.
Little horrific to think about, but that's what that was. And so he then said, all right, well, let me, you know, open up my own shop.
Right.
And so he actually mentored this guy named Samuel O'Reilly, who opened up another tattoo shop in 1880s. So now we're growing.
It's spreading out.
Yeah. But he also, Samuel O'Reilly, patented the first electric tattoo machine in 1891, which was modeled after Thomas Edison's electric pen.
Huh.
Which I didn't know that
I didn't know an electric pen.
invented an electric pen.
All right.
I was like, he's got one thing. Did he steal that from Nikola Tesla?
Probably.
And moving on. And so now we kind of start to see this starting to spread a little bit, right? We're still in New York, still kind of people in the Victorian area are still having people coming into their homes because, again, it's still kind of conservatism. I mean, even think of clothing at the time. You're fully draped out, right?
Yeah,
no one's
can't
seeing
show
anything.
my neck. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Your ankles? How dare you?
Oh, my God.
Oh, my God.
My ankle tattoo.
You whore. And so at the time, Martin Hildebrand actually tattooed his common law wife, Nora, like fully. Like bunch of like fully chest, arms, everything.
Yes.
She became one of the first tattooed ladies.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think I've seen that picture.
I'm
starting to. Yeah. Once you got into America, like some of the names started to click for me a little bit.
Got it.
Not super detailed information rattling around in my brain, but like it's like, oh, like that sounds familiar.
I'm just imagining like a hamster on a wheel, but it has like a USA cape. And it's just like, this is all we know, folks. This is all we got.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And so we went on to sideshows, made a lot of money, part of this kind of tattooed ladies circuit. Now, the stories that they kind of crafted for these tattoos, not as great. They'd be like, oh, like natives captured me and tortured me and tattooed me. And I was just like,
oh no.
But like you could have been cool and been like, I just like tattoos and like look at my body.
Right.
But you decided not to do that.
That doesn't sell money back then.
No, it really doesn't.
No.
And so what's interesting though is that a lot of women at the time were getting tattoos, and it was kind of this liberation of its own right, of women being like, this is my body. I have control of it. I'm going to put a tattoo on it.
Hell yeah.
That sort of thing. We don't really have those freedoms today. Not so much. But that was kind of the start of that through tattooing, which I think was really cool.
Yeah.
And so you see that a lot. And Mildred Hall is considered the first woman to open a tattoo shop on the Bowery in the back of a barber shop. I'm like, damn, they were like, behind 18 different closed doors, you can now
you have to make sure
shop.
You really want to get tattooed by a woman.
Exactly. God. And so in the 1930s, 1 in every 10 Americans had a tattoo.
Whoa.
Which doesn't, in my head, seem right.
No.
But them's the facts.
Because like we said before, it's always like, oh, like the bikers and the criminals are tattooed.
Right.
Like, you can't have anyone respectable being tattooed when we were growing up.
Right. And so what's interesting, though, and kind of what I think leans into that is the 1930s is when Social Security started. So actually, a lot of people, once they were given a Social Security number, got that tattooed on them.
Huh.
And so a lot of people were like, I'm going to either lose this piece of paper or whatever, and I'm not going to remember it.
Arm.
Right. So they were like, it would put it on their arm, their chest, whatever, so that it kind of like helped their memory when they needed a Social Security number.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of happening. Then you start getting into World War II, right?
Yeah.
And again, we have a lot of military tattooing happening, not just in the Navy, but across the board. And coming out of the 40s and kind of into the 50s, you have the prominent Sailor Jerry tattoo.
Hell yeah.
By Norman Keith Collins.
Yeah.
And so very prevalent even today, kind of as you were talking to before, this kind of classic Americana.
Oh, it's such a defining style.
Right.
It's so cool.
And so that's kind of leading into the 1950s. Now, as we know, culturally in the U.S. during the 1950s, a lot of conservatism and a lot of like nuclear family normative structure kind of came into play.
Yeah.
And so a lot of women no longer were getting tattoos. You know, it started to become, again, this lower class, like, we're not cool with that. Like, you want to be prim, proper, suburbia, all of that, right?
Yeah.
And so you kind of have this fallout of tattoo a bit. Now, you still have them happening, just not as prominently as we saw the beginning kind of the 20th century.
Yeah.
You know
I feel
what
like it still stayed within, like, military especially.
Sure, totally. So what happens is in the 1960s and 70s, you have these kind of rock stars and people wanting to rebel against this, you know, oppression of societal norm happening. And with that, you have someone like Janis Joplin, on the cover of Rolling Stone.
Badass.
With a tattoo,
She's so
right?
cool.
And so that kind of like showcases like, okay, well now we're gonna start, paralleling those two things. Tattoos with rockers and, drugs and all of these things. And that kind of starts to formulate into 70s, 80s. 80s, you kind of have the satanic panic aspect and like all of that, right? And so I think us growing up, it's kind of this world of, well, tattoos are only for the alternatives. Right, exactly. Either you're a Satanist or you're clean. You pick one. Yeah. And so also what didn't help was in 1961, there was a hepatitis outbreak in New York. Which can't be proven. They pointed to a Coney Island tattoo shop, and they're like, "You were kind of ground zero for this," which there's no evidence for that, and I think it was kind of the time. How do we kind of start to shuffle this around? Yeah. And there was a ban on tattooing in New York until 1997.
No shit.
Yeah.
97?
97. Isn't that crazy?
Wow, that is wild.
And I think that's also part of it. I mean, you have New York City as this kind of cultural hub for the U.S.
Yeah, I mean, that's where it started.
Right. You can't tattoo there.
Huh.
And so that kind of spreads out. You know what I mean? Especially at a time when things were kind of falling into this kind of in a box situation. Right. So again, you have Janis Joplin's, you have all these things, and in the 60s and 70s, youth, really kind of tacking on this rebellious side of things. You have Star Stowell for the first Playboy Playmate with a visible tattoo as the centerfold in the 70s.
Oh.
Yeah. You also have in the 2000s reality TV shows like Inked. Miami Inked, LA Inked. That's it. I wish there were more. I'm surprised there weren't. Yeah, I didn't give answers.
Loving Master.
You also began entering art into exhibits and institutions and really taking that artistry and really like kind of showcasing them as what they are, as art. And so actually in Chicago, 2009, there was a whole thing of Flesh and Flash, I think it was called, basically looking at tattoo art. Like flash art on Flash.
Yeah.
You got it. And so, you guys gonna get there, folks. And so, that's kind of the first display in a very prominent exhibit showcasing tattoo work as art. And then in 2011, you have the first tattoo on a Barbie. Mattel was
I'm sorry.
Yeah, Barbie's got a tattoo.
Barbie's got inked up.
Barbie is inked up.
And does she just have like a tattoo of herself? Like,
but it like keeps, it's like Inception. It just
keeps going. Yeah.
And like widely pretty much accepted. Everyone's like, yeah, that's cool.
That's pretty sick.
Which kind of surprises me.
Right.
But here we are. And then now today. I mean, like we were talking about, like our parents were kind of like, if you get a tattoo, you're dead to me.
Yeah. For me, I think because I'm the youngest. And I think my sister secretly getting a tattoo and then my brother secretly getting a tattoo. And of course, like my parents found out about it.
Right.
My dad found out because he was like, oh, like why did like $100 or so get withdrawn from your bank account on a Friday night? Like what the hell?
Super casual.
But then like when I got my first tattoo, I just came home and my parents were like, what's that? And I was like, it's a tattoo. And my mom was like, that's so cool. Like it was an evolution of like, oh my God, like you got a tattoo.
Yeah.
To, yo, that's some sick ink. To quote my dad.
And now we know where you get it from. But yeah, I mean, I think, and tattooing for so many different reasons, you know what I mean? Whether it's something as I want it to signify this, or I really think that's really cool art and I want to put that on my body because I love it, or whatever it is. I think there's so many different reasons, and everyone has their own to why they put tattoos on their body.
Yeah. Well, for me, like my first tattoo was a bear with the heart line through it, and it's a very traditional Native American symbol. The artist that I had ink it up, tattoo it on me. That
ink it up on you.
Ink it up on me.
Perfect.
He modernized it a little bit to make it less static, gave it a bit more dynamic. So like the normal, the traditional is kind of just like an arch bear with just like 2 legs. So my bear has 3 legs and it looks like it's kind of on the move. But it represents strength, good health, and all this other stuff. And that's kind of why I wanted to, as my first tattoo, was to have that spiritual connection and healing, but also I really wanted a tattoo.
Yeah.
Totally. So I feel like the ghost, the spooky bear on my left leg was the first tattoo. I was like, that shit's dope. put it on my body.
My first tattoo was actually an argument with my husband, then my boyfriend at the time, and arguing with me about how I always say I'm going to do something and then I never actually do it.
So you said bet?
I was at dinner. We were at dinner and I said, fine. And I walked outside while like dinner was being dropped at the table. I called this shop and I was like, I'd like to set up a tattoo appointment. And they're like, okay, sure. And the next week I went and I got the Chicago flag on my wrist. And that was it.
That is your first one.
Let me also remind everyone. So I went to this artist with another friend of mine. Always had gone to him. His name was Mangai. Like beautiful work. Like he did very, very amazing work. Yeah. And I walked in and I said, "Can I have a Chicago flag tattoo on my wrist, please?"
Shaking in your boots.
Right. And I'm like looking at all of his art and it's like this gorgeous like leg pieces and full sleeves and I'm just like, can you put 4 red dots and 2 blue lines? Right. Just like, Jesus Christ.
Kid.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Cigarette ash just like falling out of his mouth.
$100 minimum.
Yeah. And that's what it came out of.
Yeah.
And then after that, of course, I did my entire forearm. And
right, because you had one. Now you can do whatever
Now I need to do whatever I want.
Right.
I think that's the thing is that like, you know, because I'm not a fan of kind of that early Americana art, to your point, or like even like Sailor Jerry and things like that. But I can appreciate, you know, when I see it or with people on it, and I'm like, dude, that's really fucking cool. Like, I'm not gonna put it on me, but like, hell yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that style because it's it leaves there's a lot of rules when you design it and draw it, and like now there's like neo-traditional style, which you can add like a few more colors if you want, because usually in American traditional there's like 4 colors, I think. It's like a specific shade of red, green, and yellow, and then I think black are your only colors that you can use for American traditional.
Oh wow.
And maybe it's a blue instead of a green. But now when you get into neo traditional, like you can add more colors and like different line thicknesses too. But like one of the rules for American traditional is keeping it open and airy and using a lot of skin tone to color in the tattoo. So like you're not going in and like shading and adding all these specific colors, because it was if I remember correctly, like it was to be like, okay, this sailor's here in this port for like a hot second, let's get him inked up and onto the next sailor and get him inked up. And it's just like in and out revolving door of the tattoo shop. And so they wanted to leave them open and airy so they didn't have to go in and fill in all those details.
Right. And again, like until the first, you know, electric tattoo and like, you know, widely dispersed electric tattoo pen really came out, you're stick and poking it. Yeah. Like that's a needle and some ink. Right. You know what I mean? I'm like, that's a lot. I mean, it's just wild. Yeah. Yeah, I can't wait to get another. I'm going to start with the other arm. I'm going to see what happens.
Yeah, I only have one on the outside forearm, and I need to balance myself. It's always an issue of balance for my body and ink, which is why I'm getting another leg tattoo.
Right.
To balance out my other leg. And now it's just this arm is all floating away because it's not weighed down by ink.
I love the excuse that you came up with to continue to get tattoos for yourself. That's beautiful. I love that. But that's all I have for you on tattoos.
Yeah, no, I learned a lot pre-American stuff.
Yeah, same.
That was that's not as far back of the history as I know. It's mostly up until Sailor Jerry. Yeah, is how far back I know.
Well, and I didn't even realize that it went into an upper class. You know what I mean? I definitely, especially for this kind of religious Victorian era of things, like very conservative, very covered. Again, I'm talking about all that. Like, never would have thought something like a tattoo, or especially even women at the time, being like, "Yeah,
right,
ink me up."
Let's get inked.
And they all said that. Like, yeah. So yeah, I think we learned a lot.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah. That was a very educational experience.
Right. And in the show notes, you can find the pop quiz. Perfect. Well, that's all I have for you. Cheers. We should go get tattoos soon.
Cheers.
Cheers, skis. All right, y'all. Thank you for joining us. You can definitely find us on all the things.
Wherever you'll find podcasts.
Wherever you'll find not what I heard. I was like, that's not the name of our handles. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, YouTubes, and everywhere that you download podcasts.
Absolutely. It's
Tuesdays weekly. We didn't just decide that in the moment, I promise.
I was also trying to remember all of our handles, but I don't remember our handles.
You know what? It's going to be in the show notes.
Next episode.
So many things for this episode are in the show notes. I promise you. All right, y'all. Thank you so much. Devin, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good rest of your day.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.